ultimate journey.
Welcome to The Ultimate Journey, a podcast on awakening to spirit. Episode 28. Hi, and thank you for joining me on this podcast. I'm your host, Frank DeGenova. This episode is called Happy New Year. Nope, not yet. Although this podcast is being recorded on January 5th, year 2021, just a few days plus after the new year. It's not really New Year's. It is and it's not. I'll explain what I mean in just a bit. But first, let me ask you if you're one of the 50% of the population that makes a resolution to lose weight, quit smoking, work out, save or make more money, or any attitude or habit shift. Are you in this camp or are you in the non-committal, no resolution BS camp? Well, it doesn't matter if you are or not. The statistics actually say that 80% of the people that do make these resolutions will fail or abandon their so-called commitment by February or March. Why? Well, because people usually feel guilty about eating the way they did during the holidays, and then they put pressure on themselves to commit to something, but there was no prior commitment. There was no internal work done before. But don't worry, you have another chance. And if you fail, you can use this time to actually integrate your intentions and to work up to it. And for the 20% that have carried on, keep going, keep calm and carry on. What I find totally interesting is that when most people fail or fall off the wagon is when the new year really starts. Now I'll explain this concept, but first let's talk about calendars. Throughout the course of history, many calendars have been followed or observed. As far as we know, throughout history, there's been 4 types of calendars. There's the lunar calendar, the solar calendar, the lunar solar calendar, and the seasonal calendar. These planetary accounting systems range from Egyptian, Babylonian, Indian, Hindu, the Buddhist ones, Chinese ones, Iranian, the Mesopotamian, the Roman, the Greek, the Hellenic one, the Julian, and the present Gregorian. Let's not forget the Advent calendar of the 12 days of Christmas that we have, little chocolates and little doors that we can pull out. Can't forget that yummy calendar. Some of these systems work very well, and then we have some that you have to carry the 1, subtract the 3, and then add 1 moon or take 1 away and leap over a year. It's crazy. No wonder why the accountants love to stick with a fiscal year of 12 months. I wonder if the Martian or the Jupiter or Saturn calendars are any less complex or probably easier or whatever. I would like to add here that most of our historical events are recorded in the northern hemisphere of the solar calendar, so this will lead into what I'm going to be talking about. Man, there's so many ways you can calculate, add, subtract, and divide a year or, the rotation of one cycle of the sun around the earth. And, to be honest, it gets so confusing. They have the Chinese calendar, you have the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, and, the moon calendar. And that's what I want to focus on just for a moment here. Did you know that the indigenous people of North America call North America Turtle Island? It's a sacred animal, and it's believed that the continent is held on the back of the turtle. But what I find so cool about the turtle is that if you look on the markings in the back on its shell, you'll see that it has big plates on the back and then it's got little plates around, segregated plates all around the edges. Now, if you notice, the turtle has 13 plates usually on its back and then 28 smaller ones all along the edge and the bottom. And if you look at the lunar calendar, it has 13 moons and 28 days. This is so in alignment with a woman's menses and the menstrual cycle, and I believe this applies to males and females, even with animals. And since the moon affects the tides, which is water, we are made of mostly water, so I believe that the moon affects us. Just ask first responders what happens on a full moon. They're usually busier than usual or crazy things happen. It's all about high tide or low tide. So basically it all boils down to I'll follow the sun or back at the moon. And no, I will not quit my day job. Thank you very much. This brings us to a topic that I may lose you, but doesn't matter, because if you knew what the Delio was, It's more important than you realize, this being astrology. Did you know that the world's systems, financial, religious, political, and legal system was built on this theology? Oh, but this is for another podcast or podcasts, so stay tuned. What I will share is that even the simple concept of the playing cards all represent the seasons, the calendar, and so on. For example, you have 52 cards, which represent the 52 weeks. You've got the 4 suits, which is the 4 seasons. Then you have the dark or black and the red cards, which represent the sun and moon or night and day. Then you have the 12 court cards, which represent the 12 months. And the ace through king, the values are 13, which represents the 13 moons of the year. And that's not all. There's more. It's like a cheap infomercial. If you add up all the values of all the cards, they equal out to 364. And then you have the first joker, that makes it 365. And then the second joker is the elusive other card that's responsible for the leap year. And you don't use both jokers at one time usually, or you do, or you don't use them at all. And then you have the tarot deck, which corresponded to all the signs and the planets, and I can go on, but that's not the point of this podcast. Now, I spoke about when is the beginning of the new year. Now, we can use the 12 astrological signs in the zodiac. Now, if you're listening and you know about astrology, you probably know what I'm going to say. Each and every sign has a body part that is associated with it. Now, we have to start from the head and go to the toe. But I'm only going to say what the head is and the toe is. The first sign is Aries and is associated and corresponds to the head. And the last sign is Pisces, which corresponds to the feet. So hence head to toe. So when you're falling off the wagon or you're abandoning your resolution, guess what time it usually is? It is the spring equinox, which is about March 2021. And this is the start of spring and the sign of Aries. Now, doesn't spring make more sense? New life and new beginnings? And we can see that Passover, Easter, and other spring festivals around the world are celebrated around this time. The reason why we use a solar calendar is because most festivals are synonymous with the seasons. By using a lunar calendar, this shifts backwards about 11 days each year, and this messes up the festivals and the timelines. And if we kept on going, then everything would be backwards or really delayed. It'll be like winter in Australia, summer here, vice versa. It'll just get crazy. Personally, I would think it would make things a lot more interesting if we had certain celebrations in different times of the year. Now, if you think this is just a stretch and I'm grasping and trying to over-associate, let's look at something else. If you're European or know Latin, you will be able to relate to what I'm going to say. Now, have you ever looked at the months September, October, November, and December? Since I'm Italian, I'll do it in Italian and translate. 7, 8, 9, 10. That's right, 7, 8, 9, and 10, or September, October, November, and December. So by hypothesizing that Aries is the first month, or March that is, this all makes sense and it fits perfectly together. So basically, the 11th and 12th months are January and February. If you start probing and, doing some critical thinking, there are clues everywhere about every topic, about everything. But the problem is we just listen to one media source or whoever controls the textbooks, the curriculums of the world. We just take it, we believe it. We don't weigh them against anything. We don't think. People don't want to bother. This is very concerning to me because we've lost our ability to think critically and we just take what we are given blindly. Even journalism now has turned into just parroting, following the guidelines and rules and all that. The proverbial community standards. It's pretty sad, actually. Any narrative or different thought process is usually kind of banned or deplatformed. And I ask why? Before the calculator was invented, we had to use our brain power to calculate numbers, even if you used your hands or whatever. Now it's just like our brain is going to mush because we're not using them anymore. We're just, satiating ourselves. We're numbing ourselves with, entertainment, with sporting events, with alcohol, with booze, all that stuff. We're numbing out, and we're just putting our heads in the sand, and we're basically vulnerable. Like that whole thing, you put your head in the sand, what's sticking up is your back end ready to get plowed. So I'm just inviting you to think and to use your mind and to look at things, or not. This is not for everybody. A lot of people that I talk to, they really don't care about what I just spoke about in this episode. I do. I find it fascinating, and I like to find out why. Just like that little boy when I had to take apart every toy and everything I had to open up to see how it worked. That's just who I am. I'm not saying that you should be like that, but curiosity does kill the cat, but it also kills it in other ways. So, what was the point of this whole episode? Well, simply, if you feel guilty because you screwed up on your New Year's resolution, you've got some time to prepare for the spring equinox to start the year for real. Thank you for joining me on the Ultimate Journeys podcast, Awakening to Spirit. I'm your host, Frank DeGenova. Join me again next time for more spiritual talk. You can reach me at info@theultimatejourneyawakeningtospirit.com. And remember to walk in love and in gratitude.